Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing a GeForce GTX 1660 Super in ARK Survival Ascended. This one is the HP OEM version of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers. What do you want? What? Stop it, stop it. I know those thighs are very appetizing, but you need to stop doing that. Anyways, let's move on. As usual, I'm running it with the latest Nvidia drivers, and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Ups. GPU 0 resizable bar is disabled because the GPU doesn't support it, and we got 6 GB of GDDR6 VRAM to work with. And over on the left, we're pairing it with a Ryzen 7 5700G and 32 GB of RAM, DDR4 3200 MHz in dual channel. It's sodium because this is a mini PC from Minisforum. Let's get into it, shall we? Alright, we got a new character, my friends. As you can see, it's a very buffed one, but aside from the forearms and the legs, yes. Anyways, let's go over the settings first. I am starting this at 1080p resolution using the low settings preset, which quite surprisingly sets the resolution scale to 58%. With the 3060 Ti, it's set it to 52%. That's really weird. But anyways, I haven't really touched anything else, but I will, okay, because I don't like 58% resolution scale, and this is still not on the minimum settings. And over on the RTX stuff, of course, we can't really use anything. Alright, so the 1660 Super is actually below the minimum required GPU for this game, which asks for a 5600 XT, which is a little bit faster, as well as the GTX 1080, which is also a little bit faster than this. This is more similar to like a GTX 1070 from the 10 series GPUs. Now, with that said, you might be thinking, well, this is actually not terrible, you know, 30 plus FPS with these graphics, it's okay. But you'll only say that if you are watching this on a small monitor, because on a big monitor like mine, it looks pretty pixelated, especially around moving things, you know, and it stutters like crazy, but that's just a UE5 engine feature. Yes, it's definitely a feature, otherwise they would have fixed it by now, right? Anyways, guys, it's not really that enjoyable with these graphics unless you have like an 11-inch monitor or something like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and set it to 100% resolution scale, or native 1080p resolution. And at native res, that's a little bit better than I expected. We didn't really lose a ton of FPS. I should have seen it coming, you know, because this game doesn't really perform all that much better whenever you use the LSS, which is lowering resolution from 100% to 67% on quality, for example, on GPUs that actually support it. So over here, we see around the same 30 FPS, but of course it's down into the 20s more often than it is into the 30s, unless you get away from the water areas of the map. In that case, with more vegetation, which is interesting, I thought more vegetation would be more intensive. That's usually the case in games. You can actually get closer to 30 frames per second, but over here it's actually starting to drop as well. So at native resolution, it's going to be very difficult for us to make it very playable, you know? But let's drop anti-aliasing here. Let's drop these shadow settings right here, and foliage as well. Okay, there's a foliage option that was set to high. And let's disable the light bloom as well. So these are the minimum settings in the game, manually selected, all right? And we do get quite a boost in FPS. Holy crap, like 15 frames per second is more than I expected just by adjusting those settings. And this is looking way closer to Survival Evolved at the moment, guys. Damn, there is a huge difference between minimum settings and low settings preset. Holy crap, so that means that these GPUs can actually play the game, and there definitely should have been a very low graphics preset, of course, that just sets everything to the minimum possible settings, so you can achieve the highest FPS possible. I don't understand, why does low look so good? You know, in these recent titles, low settings is like medium or high settings in other games that have come prior to them, but clearly, even in UE5, oh my god, it's starting to stutter so much because we're rendering in a new area, by the way. It's just the shader crap loading, you know. You gotta live with that. But yeah, even in UE5 titles, you can make things look worse. So please, developers, if you're not gonna optimize your games, please just set the low settings preset to a lower value in the graphics settings. Like, you... low should be low. It should look worse. It should look bad. Like Alan Wake 2, for example, looks insane on low settings still. Alright, with all of that said, I am happy with those 43 frames per second on average. You know, you can actually play the game if you don't mind the stuttering issues, which are super annoying. Like, the 1% lows are terrible right now in the single digits, but it hasn't really stuttered in a pretty long time. It was just loading one other area of the map, and that happens every time you need to do that. But yeah, again, I know a lot of people who did enjoy ARK Survival Evolved with like 25 frames per second, and clearly a GTX 1660 Super, if you adjust the settings, it will be capable of playing this game. Now, there's another little trick that we can utilize, and that is using the console to disable the volumetric clouds. Let's set it to 0. As you can see, it makes a huge difference on how the game looks at the distance especially, and well, we gained what? I don't even know how many FPS we gained. Wait a second, let me just look in this direction. 43, 44. Okay, that's what you get. Let's enable the volumetric clouds now, and we get 39. So it's only about like 3 frames per second or 4. But let's turn them off once again, and let's play a little bit like this. Start counting the FPS, still dropping into the 30s at times. It's not a massively different experience, you know. It actually clears things up a little bit at the distance if you're trying to spot some bases, some players, and so on. You will actually be at an advantage if you disable volumetric clouds. But aside from that, in terms of like playability, I think the stutters just kill the experience way more than like the 3 to 5 FPS difference that you'd get. Also, down in this area, it doesn't really seem to make much of a difference visually. The volumetric clouds turned off. Still stuttering, of course. That's not going to go away anytime soon. In UE5, we gotta wait for UE6 for the stutters to be fixed, but no, it's never gonna happen, guys. The Unreal Engine has been stuttering since forever, since I remember it. Now, don't get me wrong, not all of the games with this engine stutter, but it's extremely difficult to make them not stutter. I've seen like the finals game, for example, that runs UE5, and it's buttery smooth, it's well optimized, and a few other games out there also run Unreal Engine, and they're also optimized and they don't stutter. That's mainly because they have a shader compilation system, which a lot of developers skip on, and that just ruins the experience for everybody. Just please implement that. Before we get into the game, let us wait like 2 minutes to compile all of the shaders, and then it's going to be a buttery smooth experience. As you can see, like now it's 30 FPS, 1% lows, because we've already ran around, loaded a bunch of stuff, and it's much better, it's more stable. Okay, so this was quite a surprise. I was actually expecting lower performance. It's not good performance by any means. 1660 Super can play, for example, Forza Horizon 5. I tested it last week on this card at the 1080p high settings with like 100 frames per second or so, maybe more than that actually. It was a really good experience, and the game also looks very good. Obviously, this is a little bit more detailed, even on low settings, but still. But that's to say that the performance is definitely not justified for how the game looks or whatever. It's still a terribly optimized title, obviously, as expected from the ARK developers, right? But it is a little bit better than what I was expecting. I'm just saying that, okay? This is a low settings preset now without volumetric clouds, and for some reason it's actually performing worse than where we started. Maybe this area is a little bit more intensive, but yeah, it's 100% resolution scale as well. These things are back to high. Of course, over here I can't really add DLSS or anything. Also, if you add a DLSS, please also add FSR for these cards that don't support DLSS. I mean, their resolution scaling is not just resolution scaling, just normal RS, you know. It actually also... It actually does a little bit of upscaling as well. I can tell that it's trying to do something, but it is really noisy at times. Right now it's not bad looking, but you can see quite a lot of ghosting around my arms, for example, when I'm moving this around like this. Noise and ghosting, yeah. It's not terrible, though. If you don't really look for it, it's probably not going to be very noticeable. And this is 69% resolution scale, of course. Perfect number. But yeah, as we are like moving through the grass and moving through the vegetation right here, you can see a ton of pixelation, guys. You might think that it's YouTube compression, and it could also add to it, of course, and make it look even more terrible. But yeah, what my eyes are seeing is a ton of pixelation like this. And of course, with a 58% resolution scale from the default low settings preset, it's even worse looking. Okay, I'm gonna set everything to the lowest once again, guys, with 69% resolution scale. So again, it's pretty pixelated whenever you are running through bushes and stuff like that, but yeah, the FPS are way more stable with these settings, for sure. We're getting 40s instead of 20s previously at low preset. It also looks 10 times worse, but hey, at least it is playable, right? And that's all we can ask for, apparently, in ARK, especially in the first year of release or so. They will probably eventually optimize something, you know? I hope they do, at least. But until they do, well, this is what we're stuck with. At least we can actually get 60s sometimes looking in some directions. Of course, looking back at the river down there, we're down into the 40s again, which is very bad. The lighting looks terrible right now. It's a shame. It's a shame that they replaced Survival Evolved with this, and like at least they closed the servers on the other game or whatever. Like, I have a friend who plays Survival Evolved a lot, and he was super mad that now he has to buy this game to keep on playing online with the latest servers and so on. It's just greed, man. It sounds like the developers are super greedy, and they just made this lazy remake of it with the same island, same mechanics everywhere. I mean, the dinosaurs are still bugged out with their movement systems and so on. It's just the same game with prettier graphics in some cases. And it's 10 times harder to run at the same time. I don't know, guys. Let's set it to 100%, and I'm gonna lower it down to 720p to try to achieve those 60 FPS. All right, here we go. 1280 by 720 native resolution, lowest settings. All right, we're getting those 60 plus. I'm almost dead, dude. Oh, you know what, guys? We should randomize 69 times from now and see what we get, you know? I think it was 70. Oh, damn it. Reset. Let's do it again. There we go. This is it. This is what we end up with. Let's create and spawn once again. Shut up. I don't care about you. All right, here we have it. Looking absolutely terrible right now at 720p resolution. It's so blurry, actually. Damn. The detail is lost, and with these graphics, no volumetric clouds as well, it's terrible. But hey, at least we can get 60 plus FPS, my friends. We're getting 63 here in the water, so that means that most of the time it will get 60 plus. It will still drop, especially by that watery, rooty area of the map with a lot of roots. It's a little bit more intensive there, so it might drop into the 50s. But hey, if you want a more stable experience without maxing out your VRAM and getting 60 FPS most of the time, which is very smooth, obviously, compared to what we've seen so far, at least. Well, this is what you gotta play with, guys. Lowest settings possible with no volumetric clouds at 720p. And over here, by the way, is the area with the roots, as you can see, and it is actually dropping into the 50s, so it's not even good for 60 plus 100% of the time, my friends. This is so intensive. I mean, so broken. But yeah, that's been it for this one. Thanks very much for watching. I'm sorry to bring you the bad news that this game performs terribly on this GPU, but I guess you already kind of knew that, right? And I'll catch you in the next one very soon. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.